What's up, fitness family? Welcome to another episode of the True Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Adrian Conway. And today we're discussing a topic of scaling. When should you scale? When should you not scale? And I believe that this question in itself might lead to some confusion for some of you. And so I want to dive right in on a little bit of an explanation on the reason that CrossFit is special. And the reason that CrossFit is special is because any person, regardless of their abilities, can look at a workout and can complete that workout and elicit a physiological adaptation that is as challenging as they could dream for it to be. So what makes that unique and special is that you program for the best and you scale for the rest. This is something that I think leaves a bad taste in some people's mouth, and of course, we don't care about that. I think it can lead to some confusion, and of course, we don't care about that. We welcome that because that allows us an opportunity to explain and give examples and be a walking, breathing example of what scaling looks like in order to help them understand the value of this method of programming for the best and scaling for the rest. Now, when I use that term program for the best means in any given community. So I'm not programming for affiliates and programming for Dallin Pepper, Jason Hopper, Jeffrey Adler, Tia Claire Toomey, Laura Horvath, Emma Lawson, Ariel Lowen, and Alexis Raptis for just some elite level athletes to throw out there. I'm not programming for them. We're not programming for those level of the best, the top of the spear. But consider the tip of the spear in the affiliate. Consider everyone who walks into the gym and consider the fittest athlete there. If you're following mainsite.com, consider the athlete who consistently does the .com workout prescribed as written and within a reasonable amount of time and hitting the stimulus. This is extremely important because if we program workouts that don't leverage the fittest, then it becomes an exclusive program, not inclusive. Because what that fit person has to do is go find a different workout to do to find a challenge. What we want to do is set the bar high and simply scale down. Well, Adrian, why wouldn't you program for the masses of the gym so that that fit person can simply do like RX plus is a common question. And my answer to that is because my job is to coach people. My job is to make them better versions of themselves. Therefore, my job is to create a vision for them. I'm a leader. My job is to help them have goals. If you program for the masses, the run of the mill, the median of a population, those are the kind of results that you're going to get. People from the baseline to the beginner level or the extremely scaled level will just shoot for that and be content with that. People that are already in that level will just be happy where they are. But if you program for the best, they will have something to look to and look toward, not just for a year, not just for 2 years, not for 5 years, but for the length of time in which they choose to be a part of your fitness community. This is what makes CrossFit special. Intensity, sure. Functional movements, yes. But to program one workout, to program for the best, then to scale for the rest, that is unique and continually set apart. With that being said, it demands a very high skill set of the coach and the leader. It demands desired autonomy for the members. People who just come in and don't want to think, people who want to come in and turn off their brain in a CrossFit gym probably aren't following a methodology in which lends itself to what they want. Are there days where you can come in and turn off your brain and just suffer and go hard with low skills and not many considerations? Sure, but that's not what we're training. We're training the brain, which is why long term we have the cure for many chronic diseases because our brain's going to stay sharp. Our brain continues to develop, not just with our physiological adaptations that take place from all the good function movements and intensity that we promote to them, and the good nutrition practices, of course, that we demand and prescribe to our clients. For some of you states out there. All that considered, we're talking about scaling in this episode because scaling is an art. Scaling should not look the same every time that there's a pull-up prescribed in a workout. If kipping is allowed, should you always just do a traditional kipping pull-up? Maybe not. Should you be learning how to refine a butterfly pull-up if you've been doing kipping for years? Yeah, you should. Should you always butterfly pull-up? Absolutely not. If you can't do a strict pull-up, therefore you're not doing kipping pull-ups yet, should you always do a banded pull-up with a green band? No. Should you always loop it around your feet? No. Should you always put it across the J hooks on a squat rack? No. Should you always do a jumping pull up? No. You want to scale to elicit an appropriate response so that you can continue to get fitter. Again, the value of programming for the best and scaling for the rest. We are setting the precedent that you will always have something to strive to be. Once you're there, then guess what you will strive to do? You will strive to move faster. You will strive to increase your power output by doing the movements faster and with more efficiency because it allows you to have a higher power output. Excuse me. Now, I've been in the CrossFit space since 2011. There are many people who have been in the space longer than I. I came into the space with a background in strength conditioning. I have a degree in human performance. I taught a course as an adjunct instructor at university that helped prepare people for their CSCS certified strength conditioning coach specialist. So I certainly tip my hat at the specialists who love and geek out on energy systems and movement types and different forms of muscle contractions like eccentric and concentric and isometric. And do CrossFit coaches need to know all those things? They should. They certainly should. Is it the base level for beginning coaching? No. Does it need to be? No. If you're already at a gym with someone writing a good program and you know how to coach the air squat and coach it well, and you know how to coach the muscle up and coach it well, that's a good variety of movements all there for in between that you can follow a progression or create a progression for and create a strict, clean timeline and execute at a high level. You always need to be refining the way that you see and correct movement. Of course, this is something I'm continuing to refine as a coach who teaches other coaches how to do it. With that being said, this scaling thing is tricky because you have to know your people. So if you're watching or listening to this podcast and you don't know your people and you don't know yourself and you're not trying to learn yourself and really, why do I not have this movement? What is the function of my body part that struggles with this? Where am I weak? How do I make that strong? If you're not asking those kinds of questions, scaling will be hard for you because what you're going to do, and when I say hard, I mean not hard to do, but it's going to be hard to see results, good results, progressive results towards the RX style movement if you don't know what you're doing and you're not becoming a student of yourself and this methodology. When I say that, I also want to lean into the fact that I've seen time and time again, athletes follow a program, like something that we might offer at True Fitness, like a true competitor track. We have a competitor track that leads to some heavy loads that need to be moved and some high skill gymnastics that need to be done. And that the competitor track is for competitors. With that being said, people often ask about scaling and hitting the intended stimulus. And I don't always have black and white answers for them. And this leaves them frustrated. And this is why I don't do that, because there is no remedy or time in which hitting an allocated time stimulus, for example, if it's 21, 15, 9 thrusters and pull-ups, Fran, and you have the desire to hit the intended stimulus that I'm going to hit. Well, I'm going to finish Fran in about 2 minutes, 2 minutes and 30 seconds, probably. I would assume I can keep, it's a speed thing more than it's a fitness thing for me at this point. So I could do that and be fine. I'm going to be hurting, but I think I can still lay that kind of time down. So you're saying that you're relatively new to CrossFit, but you want to be a competitor too, and you want to do Fran in 230, and you think that's going to help you catch me. It will never help you catch me. Are there days where that might be a good idea for you to scale back the load and scale back the volume so that you can also do a 230? Sure. But there's a time, folks, in everyone's fitness journey where you have to do the work. Specifically, if your intended outcome is to compete at any level with other people that you're trying to catch. So maybe you're intermediate and you want to be RX. That's cool. Well, to become RX, you got to at some point be grinding with RX loads. So you can't just always go as fast as the RX people because you'll never use those loads that they use. You have to be creative. Are you scaling back reps? Are you scaling back weight? And if you're always scaling back reps or you're always scaling back weight, you're doing it wrong. You got to mix and match it. You got to create variance within your scaling. Again, it has to be progressive. You got to track and quantify everything. You're like, man, this sounds like a lot of work, coach. I just wanted to show up for a good workout. Well, then you're not training. You're just working out. And by all means, you're welcome to do that. But you need to learn. You need to know. You need to improve how you do a thing. And scaling is one of those things. Scaling is one of the greatest ways to set yourself apart from other people who are trying to beat you at a thing. And I'm even talking to elite level athletes. Elite level athletes often have to call audibles in their training if they're receiving it from a coach, because not every day do they feel the same. Not every day do they feel the way that I expect them to feel walking into the gym. So with that being said, what audibles do they call if they can't get a hold of me immediately to send a text message to adjust a thing while they're in the gym getting ready to do the thing? They've got to learn too. And the best way, those that are best know best. It's progressive and you can improve it over time. But what I don't want everyone to do, listen to this podcast. I want you to think, man, do I always scale people so they hit the intended time stimulus by just reducing weight? Because you can't do that. Maybe they literally need to be doing 7-5-3 thrusters with 95 pounds today and 21-15-9 pull-ups because they aren't strong enough to do 21-15-9 on the thrusters and not get time capped like tremendously. Sometimes you need to do a 10-minute frame. Sometimes you need to do, a 35-minute, 40-minute 50-50, even though people are doing it in the teens. In order to compete, this is where it's really important. You at some point have to do the work to adapt to doing the work. And I know that sounds silly, and that's even a silly quote. And I don't have anything catchy to say to you other than the fact that when you're following a competitor program, it is better for you to do the work and do it slower most of the time than it is for you to scale back the work or change the skills and do it just as fast as everyone else. If you're trying to be the quarterfinal athlete, when you're trying to be just the open athlete, a little bit different of consideration because we know the cyclical nature and the high demands of the open, often the AMRAPs that take place, right? So because of the AMRAP style nature, you need to be able to keep high frequency rate turnovers. You need to keep the loads a little bit lighter. Now, is that always the case? No. And could we run into a year where we do all task priority workouts in the open? Maybe. I'm not sure. But I want you to know that scaling is hard and you have to do it well and you have to practice it well. Now, I'm going to share with you guys something that I watched recently. I try to keep up on all the other the content that CrossFit's putting out. I try to follow the athletes because, of course, I do commentary at the games and at the Rogue Invitational. I've been fortunate to do that on several instances. This helps me stay tied to their styles of training, what they're doing with their mindset, how they're developing as individuals. And I feel like it helps me provide a better product for you guys when you're listening as the audience. So I keep up on pretty much all things that I can with the way that the time allocates itself for me in my life. I watched Dave Castro's Weekend Review. Of course, he's a boss of mine on seminar staff and within CrossFit HQ. And I really respect and admire his opinion and his perceptions on training. And I want you to know that I was watching this episode the other day, and it only validated some of the things that I had recently shared with someone on a call who I mentor currently for coaching. And so I'm going to pull that up so that you guys can see this a little bit. This is them interviewing Amy Lyons and the new owner of her gym. She is currently recently just sold her gym, and so this is them kind of doing their thing and going through the details of this interview. But they're talking about programming at this point, and they're talking about Amy here, her initial. Some of her initial experiences in Fran and how she perceives it, and Dave follows up. So I'm going to let this play, and then I'm gonna follow up with it here in just a second.
So I continue to program, and I always have. I've loved it, and I've always done the programming. So it's been a fun ride doing all that.
To the point about the 95 pounds and take an hour or 65 pounds, I think there was this moment, and it's really still continuing, that several years into doing CrossFit, I saw some of these programmers start trying to maintain the stim, and it even crept into some of our teaching, but I think it was completely wrong. This notion of we want to achieve the time domain stimulus, and so everybody should be doing Fran in 3 to 4 minutes and lower the weight or scale. And I thought that was such a misguided approach, because there's entirely moments when you should do Fran at 95 pounds and it should take you 10 to 15 minutes. And so I think we still see that in a lot of places, that type of programming where let's match the time domain by scaling so significantly. But I think it's wrong. And I believe you should actually sometimes do these workouts that might take someone 3 or 4 minutes and grind through them and let it take 10 to 12 minutes for said athlete. All right. So Ben, so what do you...
Dave jumped off that real quick, didn't he? Look, a tremendous value, right? And it only reaffirms some of the old school. Maybe it's old school. Maybe it's because I began CrossFit by browsing.com and failing significantly at some of these workouts and getting completely lapped and housed by some of these OGs like the Rich Fronings, the Graham Holmbergs, the Rob Orlandos, the Dave Lipsons, the Chris Spielers, the Tommy Hackenbrooks, the Pat Burks, the Pat Barbers. Like, these people were the names, the Josh Everetts, Jason Kalipas. They were the names that I saw on CrossFit.com as I was experimenting, right? I was experimenting with CrossFit. And because I was experimenting, I was in this beautiful place where I was curious, but I was confident in my fitness. So I was biting off more than I could chew often because I had a little bit of arrogance to me because I knew I was strong. I knew I was fit. What I didn't have was that blend of those things going down together. And so what I want to share with you guys through this episode is the affirmation of curiosity and also the willingness to experiment with that in completion of a workout of the day. So if you're a coach leading group classes, if you're a coach programming for remote athletes, and I say this as I speak to all those individuals that I help mentor and nurture in regards to the way they program, the way they see movement, the way they lead communities, is to experiment with what a timeline looks like so that you have enough room to be like, you know what, today I'm gonna let you go ahead and get all that 95 pounds you can handle. Go ahead and do it as prescribed. I'm not going to time cap you, but guess what? If I'm going to give you this freedom and I'm going to let you do this, you got to finish the workout. I don't care if it's 8 minutes and you're the only one that's been out there grinding for 2. You asked me to, you wanted to do it as prescribed. Let's do it as prescribed, right? I think there's a beauty in that. And I'm not saying that we should hurt our athletes or expose our athletes to stimuli in which they're not physically prepared or mentally motivated to do. So you can't force someone to do that. But I think there's a real beauty in this. And I do want to echo again that for me as a coach that works with several competitors at both a high level and even all the way down to an intermediate level that want to be RX, is that there is a time and a place for you to grind and do singles of muscle ups on your way to 20 in a workout. Because there's a time for you to have to figure that out. There's a time for you to be frustrated in your inadequacies with the movement. There's a time for you to troubleshoot. There's a time for you to experiment linking 2 reps together, even though you haven't done it and you're 6 reps deep into almost getting 20, right? Like there's a time for all of this. And if we're always concerned about getting time capped or stopping a workout because everyone else is already done, or shortening the amount of work, or the shortening and restricting the amount of load that's being managed so that we can just hit a time stimulus, we will not progress physiologically, emotionally, and psychologically the way that we need to close the gap on those that we're chasing. It just won't happen from a competitor's perspective. So again, if you're the person that's like, man, it takes me, 10 minutes to do 100 chest to bar pull-ups, and some of these other guys, they're doing it in 3.5 minutes in the beginning of a workout. Adrian, how should I scale it? I don't know. It depends on where your strengths and weaknesses lie for you as an individual, but I'm going to say there needs to be a time and a place where you're grinding through those 100 at the beginning of a chipper. So you might need to set out 35 minutes for you to do that conditioning piece, and everybody else might need 20. And that's just the way it's got to be. Can we screw this up? Yeah, we can really screw this up. If you're doing that all the time, you shouldn't be doing that all the time, but there's a time and a place. And here's also where I want to defend the reason why we've gone there. Dave said, hey, I think there was a time in our methodology. I think it even bleeds into the time now where we're seeing people have their class stick to time domains, time caps, hitting the intended stimulus, and they're really leaning hard into that. Well, it's because we're managing group classes. I've got classes with 20 people in them. And even if I know my people at a high level, I can't always allow my members to go outside when I expect the workout to be 5 minutes or less or 6 minutes or less. And I know my fire breathers are finishing in 4. Sometimes I've got to nail in the scaling for everyone so that we're not taking 10, because I can't allow my class to go 5 minutes over because I've got a family to consider. I've got a mom that's got to get home. I've got a dad that's got to get the next class started. And I don't want to be rude and take up their time. We've got 60 minutes to allocate a clean class experience for someone. And if we can be punctual, boy, does that heighten their trust in us. Does that heighten the professionalism in which they perceive us to have? Does that heighten, especially if they're out in the world as high achievers, that the admiration and respect that they have for us as managing their time and our business? So I don't want to completely discourage you guys that have a class plan and you stick to it to a T and you're constantly scaling. I don't want to discourage you in any way. I want to uphold you, in fact, if you're doing that on a regular basis. But because there's 2 sides to every coin, and my job is to stay in the gray with what is true and what is right, I want to remind you that we can't always do that. Maybe this is where we have and see the purest of value in single, single priorities, what I'm going to call this single priority training for a class, which what I mean by that is if we're doing Fran for a day, you know what the temptation is. The temptation is to do 5x3 heavy thruster before we do Fran, or to maybe do some snatches before we do Fran, which absolutely makes no sense. If you're doing that or following a program that does a movement like a snatch, and then you're doing thrusters and pull-ups in the conditioning, it's dumb. from a class perspective, from a class perspective, from a class perspective, from a class perspective, affiliate perspective. If you're doing it by yourself, you got time. You got time to warm up and cool down and practice movements and warm them up and train them all before you go by yourself because you're going by yourself. So be mindful of that. I'm aware of that. I do that in my garage all the time. I got the time. I'm by myself. But in the class, you can't do it. The strength movement or the skill movement, that all has to be layered in to go into the conditioning. But listen to this. We don't got time for the 5x3 and Fran if you want to have the freedom to let that member grind for 12 minutes, because now we can let them do that and experiment and try, even though fire breathers are finishing in under 3 minutes and the most of our class is going to be finishing under 6. But there's going to be a handful of people today that finish outside of that time domain, and you've got the freedom to do that because guess what you did? You had a thorough warm up, you practiced thrusters, you practiced pull-ups, you refined their movements, you trained it, you practiced, you got them set and then hit the go button at 30 minutes. And at 30 minutes, they're going in Fran, and you know that even if they're slow and they go 15 or 20 minutes, which would be a huge whiff, that might be a little bit on the very, very, very big mistake side, but you have the time for it. So every class doesn't need to be jam-packed with stuff, folks. Don't let the inmates run the asylum. You know, as well as I know, that when a class is coached appropriately and we train the movements and develop the movements before we hit 3, 2, 1, go, that Fran is plenty and that's all you need. Fran is plenty and that's all you need. That's 21, 15, 9 thrusters and pull-ups. And if you can't navigate that and that doesn't make sense in your head, you don't understand, and that's okay. Come to the class and be told what to do because that's why you come. Thank you. Come again. Team, we talked about scaling. I know I was good for a Coach Conway rant there for that one. I had a lot of fire behind that because I appreciate that podcast. If you guys don't listen to Dave's podcast or Weekend Review, go watch it. And if you don't regularly watch the affiliate interviews and you're an affiliate owner, I think you're missing out on some things. If you're a coach and you don't listen to those, I think you're missing out on some things. I think what I find there is exactly why I was drawn to CrossFit, is the peer-to-peer value that we bring one another through this experience. I mean, it's the same with all kinds of content that CrossFit puts out now, where, Chase is back on the podcast every Wednesday. I hope I get to join him every now and again. We've got Eric O'Connor hosting with Stefan Roche on the CrossFit training podcast, but it's all on the CrossFit YouTube. So but we're doing lives, we're doing live interaction things from the CrossFit podcast side, now on the sport of fitness side, and the CrossFit training side, and they all bring different unique aspects of value to us as a community. And I think it's a beautiful thing. I'm really proud of everyone who's put their best foot forward and invested in this. It seems like it's kind of been a long time coming, and I think the community has wanted it. So I hope it continues to build traction and momentum. I find value in it, so I watch it and I tune in. And I think if you find value in it, it's really important for you to invest in the time to watch the things and engage the things. Otherwise, it's going to go away, right? It's going to go away, and none of us really know what's going to happen with the acquisition of the business. So if something's not fruitful, it will likely go quickly. So let's put some views on that stuff. Let's engage it. Let's help with the traction and spread the love and spread the word. Because I believe that even if you're just a day-to-day athlete, you will garner so many lessons that are free 99 that will help enrich the value that you pay to be a member at a gym, or help enrich the value that you pay to get your return on the $1,250 that you spend to get your level 1 and level 2, even if you're not coaching. If you are coaching, I shouldn't need to explain to you the value of listening to other people's troubles, other people's strengths, other people's professionalism, the things that they're really succeeding in, but also the things that they're struggling with, because we get the most valuable reps from the ghost reps. And I say that with very strong conviction. I believe that spiritually about myself. I believe that as a married man, I believe that as a father, I believe that as a son, that I get the best reps in my ghost reps. And what my ghost reps are, team, are when I can learn from someone else's experiences and I ain't got to do it. That means I can look to my right and look to my left, and I can see what those men are experiencing, or see what those coaches, or see what those athletes, or see what those Christians, or see what those, whatever you want to fill in, whatever you believe, whatever you follow, learn from others. So you don't got to learn the hard way. It cleans up your path real nice and tidy if you do it, and you do it with wisdom. So nonetheless, again, I'm good for a rant. You know me. Guys, if you don't do anything, do your best to keep rising. If I can help you in any way, come find me on Instagram at Adrian Conway _ slide in my DMs. I'll do my best with giving you all the information and all the value that I can right there in a DM message. If you're looking for coaching, you know where to find me and our staff. It's ttrufitness.com. Please reach out now. We are onboarding with available slots for 1-to-1, and certainly looking forward to bringing people on and making our team complete in 2026. And that's all I got for y'all. So we're still in the winter arc. The holiday season is rapidly approaching. Don't lose your gains. stay on top of your accountability, and kill them with consistency. See you in the next episode.